that we called to just get an update on some of the permit activities going on at Hanford. There was a question about whether or not and to what extent we should comment on these, but I think the general consensus of people I've talked to is that we'll let Odo get down in the weeds on this. So Matt is going to give us an overview for 5 or 10 minutes. And then we thought that any other participants in the meeting that know anything about what's going on with the government shutdown at Hanford, we could chime in and just have a general update or discussion, because I think there's several people on this call like you, Max, that probably know a little bit more than the rest of us. So we might just very quickly have people introduce themselves. If we could start out with Tom.
Hi, everybody. Tom Cecilia. I'm the Hanford hydrogeologist at Oregon Department of Energy and service staff to the board.
Harry. We can come back to Carrie. How about Suzanne Dahl?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Dahl. I'm with the Washington State Department of Ecology. I'm the Tank Waste Treatment Section Manager.
Great. Thanks for being here. David.
Hi, I'm Dave Boothroyd, and I am just a concerned citizen, and I'm a rather new member to the board.
And Felix.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Felix Gent. I'm a graduate student at PSU. Months ago, I saw a presentation about Hanford, and I'm just here as a member of the public.
Okay, great. Thanks. Let's see. Kelsey.
Hi, Kelsey Schenk with The Edge.
And what exactly is the Edge?
So The Edge consolidates all of the DOE subcontracting and prime contracting opportunities into one location. And then we also cover what's going on across the complex in terms of reporting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Michael Freeman. We're just doing introductions, Mike.
Okay.
Mike is a member
me
of
to introduce myself.
Yeah, very quickly.
My name obviously is Michael Freeman. I am a retired industrial scientist, chemist specifically.
And board member. So.
And board member, yes.
Yeah. Mia Burke.
Hello, everyone. Mia Burke. I'm a member of the Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board, also work for Hanford Challenge.
And Stephanie, I see you're signed on.
I am. I'm Stephanie Schleif. I'm the Nuclear Waste Program Manager with Washington State Department of Ecology. What we do, we're the state agency that oversees the Hanford cleanup.
Okay, I see Ryan was here earlier. I don't see him on there now. And there were a couple people who have phoned in. So if you're one of the people that have phoned in, now's your time.
Yeah, Ryan is here. Let's do Ryan first, and then try to get the two phone folks.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still here. Ryan Miller. I'm the communications manager for Ecology's nuclear waste program. Thanks.
This is Steve March, board member, a past board member, and was reappointed earlier this year.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, I guess I should introduce myself. Max Woods, Assistant Director for Nuclear Safety and Energy Security at the Oregon Department of Energy.
Sorry, Max. We all know you.
That's all good.
Okay. So over to you, Matt.
Well, then I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Matt Hendrickson, radioactive waste remediation specialist for ODO. One thing to note for everyone attending is that this meeting is being recorded per Oregon public meeting rules and will be posted in short time, hopefully before next week. Along with that, if you're a member of the public or press, there is time for public comment and questions scheduled for 4:25 at this point. So we will open it up at that time at 4:25. We won't end the meeting before that, I promise. Originally, I got us the small group of OHCB together to give just a small discussion, see if they wanted to comment on the two permit modifications that are up. Excuse me while I shut my window because the jet's flying by. The high level waste permit modification and the change in environmental testing permit for the DF law system, direct feed low activity waste. As I was digging through those, I'm not 100% there, but talking to my peers here in Odo, we're leaning probably not to comment. I do have a few questions that hopefully, if ecology can jump in at the end of my 5 minutes. If they have any answers, great. If not, we'll move on to the more nebulous question of what happens during a shutdown. So a lot of the permit modification, from what I saw, I think the most important thing, at least when it comes down to high level waste facility, is some of the permits being changed to reflect the move towards the direct feed high level waste, model, similar to what's happening at the direct feed low activity waste. That kind of looks very similar to what they're doing now. The pretreatment facility isn't there and might not be there in the future to pre-treat this waste. And, that has some benefit because there's a lot of problems with the old pretreatment facility that might be alleviated by going to this direct feed method. But there are some other things about the high level waste facility that we are waiting to see in the future, such as the tank waste characterization facilities and what kind of capability that will have, whether they're going to have a leaching process or not. But those are decisions that even in the current system plans that I don't see happening until, or at least enhancing that feed until 2050. But what was important is the changes to the glass forming system, which was a direct result of lessons learned from the direct feed low activity waste system, already proving some of the value for the current vitrification plant for low activity waste. They had problems getting the glass forming system, so all that frit and additives that need to go into the milter so that it can bind up the low activity waste and produce a good glass vitrified product. Having a hard time getting the proper mix and getting it to feed correctly. And so the lessons that they learned from DFLAW are being directly applied to HLW, the high level waste facility, which is something I like to see. I like to see that they are taking, DOE is taking that into account and changing it so they don't repeat any problems that they may have in the past. So between those two things, the glass forming system and kind of putting more into the permit, the direct feed are two of the big ones. When it comes to the changes in the environmental testing permit, I have a few more questions. I'm hoping that our friends in ecology might shine a bit of light on. We all seen, I hope everyone here at the board saw that they did move to critical decision 4, which is DOE moved to critical decision 4, which is startup of the vitrification plant. I also hope that you saw that Milter 1 has passed its environmental testing and is scheduled to come online with 3 million gallons of waste, of real tank waste that is going to be treated rather than just the simulant that they have been doing up to this point. So it sounds like everything's ready to go. But what hasn't happened is Milter 2 hasn't yet had the environmental testing done. And they haven't tested for both Milters at the same time, the dual testing. And that is much of what the permit changes are about, is putting in the permit the ability to take both Milters on an individual basis, and then later on a combined basis, that dual melter setting. I do have, a few questions about that, especially how that relates to total operating efficiency. If anyone remembers that old term total operating efficiency, and how that will impact DF laws flow and production moving forward. It also gives me some question of how likely, I don't know, but I hope that it's likely that both melters will be online at the same time, rather than them just melting in just melter one, keeping hot glass in two, and then going to two, letting hot glass sit in one, kind of rotating, having one go while the other is up, not out of service, but sitting passively. I look forward to seeing more information on that as well. I also look forward to seeing the testing criterion. Something that I did like to see in the permit is that they do still have to, even with the dual melter setup, every 5 years, they have to do the environmental testing again. So that is what I've seen. I don't think that any of it rises at this time, although I still need to confer with my peers in Odo. Rises to a commentable letter, at least from Odo's stance. And with that, I will send it to Ecology if any of you would like to make comment.
So yeah, I mean, good job describing the two different permit modifications that are out for public comment. The second one that you discussed, the Class 2 permit modification, for that primarily is around the issues having to do with the low activity facility and the environmental performance demonstration test. So originally it was planned in the permit that the environmental performance demonstration test would be done on both melters at the same time. And then as we started doing the testing earlier this summer, realizing that that the melters they run well and the off gas systems run well, but they run a little bit better or more predictably um, on their own better. And the reason why that's important is it's not so much how they're going to run later on when you're running the facility, but it's if you want to have a very steady state condition for the environmental performance demonstration test, it's basically it's a big lab test, right, on the facility. You run the system for 8 hours, very steady state, and you're injecting spike materials at the front end of the melter, and those are there's metals and there's dioxins and furans and there's volatiles, and you're spiking these materials in and at the melter, and then you're measuring them at the stack at the off gas, and you're trying to see, okay, I know how much I put in and what I put in, and then what comes out at the off gas at the stack. And ideally in a test that shows the facility successful, you show that you're reducing organics by 99.99%. You show that you're below your values on metals going out the stack and below your values on dioxins and furans and et cetera, et cetera. And so you need the plant to run in a really steady state situation to have a test that would last 9 hours, 8 hours of spiking, right? And so what we collectively decided was that that back earlier this year in the summer, the system together when both melters were running weren't running in a way that was giving us a predictable test. And so we opted to put in a permit modification that would test the first melter to the same, all to the same things. And then we test the second melter. And then after that, they'd be allowed to introduce tank waste into the system. And then after the system was up and predictably running on dual melters, we would test both melters together again with the same spiking type situation and lab test situation. And so as you mentioned, they successfully were able to do melter 1 and do the testing on it, and we got the lab test, all the laboratory back, reams of data from the laboratory on all of that sampling that was done up the stack, and they passed their test to the parameters. And so then we put certain limiting parameters on that melter and issued a permit that allowed them to run that melter, and issued a letter that allowed them to treat tank waste in that melter. And then last week we ran the same tests on melter 2 on simulant. Both of those are run on simulant. And that completed on Saturday, the second melter.
So, Matt, what I heard was at this particular point in time, Odo is leaning toward not commenting on the permit. Is that correct?
I'm leaning that way.
Okay.
I will confirm again with my colleagues after today and Thursday in particular. I've got some other research to do then. Were there any other questions that anyone had for Suzanne, though, or ecology about this?
I have to express concern about not testing the two melters in operation at the same time. With some experience in testing and dealing with complex systems, opportunities for cross flow and feedback between two systems seems to me anyway to be a vital test. Could there momentary overpressure from one unit push something back into the other? Questions like that. I just am a bit concerned.
Suzanne?
Well, right, and so it's it's a good concern. It's our concern as well. That's why we maintained the requirement for doing both melter testing. It's called dual melter testing in the class 2 permit modification. We retained that, and we gave them a permit condition that required that they do it within the first 240,000 gallons of tank waste, or within 6 months. They do a successful dual melter test, and they can't run both melters together in a production mode until they've passed that test. So they've passed for melter 1, and we've given them that operating permit with the limits on how that one melter and off gas systems run. We'll get the data in the next 2.5 weeks for the second melter. We'll go through a similar process, developing and operating permit limitations for that second melter. And right now they're only allowed to put tank waste into melter 1 after the second permit mod, and after the second set of data has been reviewed. If it's successful tests, they'll be able to do that with the introduced tank waste into the second melter, and they won't be able to run the two melters together unless they're gearing up to doing the dual melter test, until they've done a successful dual melter test. But that means successful, you ran the test and you got the lab data back, you analyzed it and figured out what were the correct operating parameters, because there's all sorts of things that you can limit in the facility to make it, you get what you test. If you ran a successful test at having so much throughput and having the catalytic oxidizer running at a at a certain temperature, and the HEPA's running at a certain throughput, and different off gas systems running at different temperatures, then that's where they have to run the facility. They have to run the facility within those limits.
I guess I'm just afraid of synergistic effects. For example, one reactor producing a large amount of oxidizables while the other is producing a lot of volatile metal oxides. I just don't, I'm just a little concerned.
Suzanne, it looks like you're talking, but you're muted.
The interesting thing about the melters is, so both melters have, right after them, they have a thin film system, and then right after that, there's a submerged bed scrubber and a WESP. And then after that, the rest of the off-gas system, which is quite a few different off-gas systems, about 6 different units. Right after that, they're all joint. And so they have a joint off-gas system beyond those ones that I mentioned. And so when we ran the first melter test and when we ran the first melter test, we ran it with actually the full load that would have gone to both melters going through one melter. So we tested the off-gas system at the same volume of contaminants that it would have seen if both melters were running. That doesn't mean that they don't have to do a dual melter test, and they can't run the dual melter until they have a successful test, because that's what's written into the permit.
Thanks,
Actually,
Suzanne.
I found it interesting that the dual melter permit, or for the dual melter test, that they will actually be running it with tank waste, but spiking with extra simulant for that test. So that seemed conservative to me. That did. I have a quick clarifier for you if you can answer it. You mentioned that they can't run this, or they have to do they can't run, was it 240,000 gallons or 6 months?
They have to initiate the dual melter test within 6 months or 245,000 gallons. The 45 might be wrong. It's 240,000 gallons.
Is that 240,000 gallons part of the 3 million gallon post demonstration test material? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question maybe for Stephanie. No comments from our board, for example. How is that taken by ecology? I mean, we could, for example, comment on something that we didn't like about the permits, but we almost never comment on things that are positive, if you will. What from your standpoint, is it helpful to get letters from entities such as ours that say, go ahead, good job, or just nothing?
So Suzanne has been with our agency longer than I have and might have some thoughts on this, but I think silence always feels unknown. So if, you have comments and want to provide those, or you don't have comments and you appreciate the change, we have gotten comments like that previously, and it does help us know the perspective of various individuals and entities, even if you're in support of a change. So I guess I would encourage you, if you are supportive of the change and what's documented in the permit modification, providing that to us in a letter, we would love to see that. Just like we would love to see your comments if you also had things that we could improve in the permit modification.
Okay. Before we leave this topic and talk about the federal shutdown, any other comments? So
1 minute till public comment. So.
Oh yeah, 1 minute. So I guess after public comment, Max, maybe we could ask you to lead off and give your perspective, and then maybe hear from ecology and anyone else that wants to comment on it.
Yeah, that sounds great, Jeff. We can probably open up the public comment period right now. I have on my watch, it says 4:25.
Okay, great. This meeting is now open for public comment. Do we have any?
I do not see any hands raised or questions within the chat yet. Let's give it a, you know, a little bit longer, just in case. Because the organizer's computer just turned to 425. Well, while we wait for that, Max, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I know and be glad to hear from Stephanie or anybody else who might have additional insight. The U.S. Department of Energy in general is still working for the most part, as far as we can tell. My job entails working with DOE at multiple different levels, not only on the Hanford nuclear waste side, but on other work that we do. And as far as I can tell or have been told, they have carryover funding, what they might call unspent money from previous fiscal year that's being used right now to fund the majority of DOE operations. I've also been told that that is probably only going to last for up to 4 weeks. We all may hope that the government isn't shut down for 4 weeks, but one never knows how these things may go. At that time, I would be hard to say exactly what happens with DOE operations in general. But I would expect that Hanford, because of its critical importance, safety, environmental protection, you can't just stop the melter, that Hanford will continue. And that work at the site will continue even if the government continues to be shut down and even if DOE in general doesn't have or spends all of their carryover funding. It seems almost hard to imagine critical site work not proceeding. Now, I would expect there would be, it's kind of speculating what exactly would happen, but surely some functions would be slowed or have to be more prioritized or perhaps even stopped. But I can't imagine anything that's on the critical path, the safety functions or, environmental protection would pause. So that's kind of where I see it right now. Our board meeting in November, that might be one of those actions that, if the government is still shut down, does DOE have the ability to send someone to Boardman in November? I don't know. Maybe not. But that's kind of how I see what's happening right now. Stephanie, anything to add? Sorry to call on you directly here, but if you're the right person.
That's okay. I thought you did a great job, Max, summarizing exactly what I've been told as well. So we haven't been told there's going to be any impact due to the shutdown on law commissioning. We haven't been told anything outside of what you've been told on, carryover funding. I do know that what typically happens with the federal government is after carryover funding, after they start to run out of that, they shift to minimum safe requirements. And that means that each of their contractors would have to identify what their min safe activities are, who are the people they need to keep on to keep the site in minimum safe. And then Department of Energy would go through the same exercise. So I haven't been told specifically when that is going to be, but I think Department of Energy is trying to figure out all of that right now. But as it relates to the commissioning and the startup, we haven't been told that that's going to be impacted. They're still working towards that milestone date.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie.
Mia, do you have a perspective from the Hanford Advisory Board?
No, that's exactly the same information we've been hearing. It all lines up with what Max and Stephanie shared.
Any questions from the board? Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a statement on one of the news apps saying that EPA would not proceed with Superfund cleanup. It's DOE that's doing the 324 building cleanup to meet circular requirements. Is that at all affected?
I don't know. I don't know I don't know if anybody else on this call could answer that question, Mike. It's a good question. EPA, I think, is a similar situation where they also have, just like we described, carryover fund that they're using right now And the similar situation, if that money or when that money runs out, they would be, have to prioritize what exactly they need to do and how to keep operations flowing. So it's hard to say, right? So much depends on how long the shutdown goes, each individual agency's priorities, their specific funding mechanisms they might have, reserve funds they might have to draw upon. So there's a lot of questions that I couldn't answer right now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll just share the only additional thing that I've heard is EPA has said they likely have less than 30 days worth of carryover, but they don't know exactly how much. So we haven't seen that our local EPA, who oversees the Circlus side of the Hanford cleanup, has been impacted yet, but likely when we do hear it might be with very little notice. And it might be sooner than, we hear DOE saying they're moving to min-safe because they're out of their carryover. So that's the only additional thing that I would add there.
So both Ecology and ODO get some funding from the Department of Energy. Is that going to be impacted?
I sure hope not, Jeff. No indication that that's the case. We've been approved for our fiscal year 26, which we're now in fiscal year 26, federal fiscal year 26. Our budget's been approved. We are such a small amount of funding compared to the overall DOE budget or Hanford budgets that I'd like to think we will not be impacted. But if the state budget also works on a reimbursement, it's kind of getting to the details of state budgeting. With sort of a reimbursement process where we accrue cost and then seek reimbursement afterwards on a quarterly basis. So we wouldn't seek reimbursement anyway for a few months on our sort of the money that we accrue, the cost we accrue. If the shutdown lasts for 6 months, then we might be in a different situation. But that's getting pretty far ahead of ourselves today. I feel okay with our budget right now.
I'm gonna knock on wood for all of us, hoping that statement doesn't come true. The 6-month shutdown, that would be terrible.
That's
so
hard to
we're in the same boat. So we assess, we have around 100 full-time positions in our program. Majority are funded through fees assessed to the Department of Energy or through grants that Energy is obligated to fund through the tri-party agreement for the work that we do overseeing the cleanup. We have not seen or anticipate that our budget is going to be impacted through the shutdown. So we're pretty lucky. And I do have to hop. I apologize. I have a hard stop.
Okay, I think we're about to wind up. So last call
Stephanie.
for questions or comments. I see none.
Anything for anyone except Stephanie? I mean, we do have Suzanne here, who I regard as an expert for sure.
Expert on government shutdowns. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. This was informative. And if there aren't any last minute questions, we will close the meeting.
Thanks,
Okay.
Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Right.
Thanks for
Thanks,
calling
Matt,
this
for
meeting.
setting this up.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good afternoon.